Finals of the 8th Gwangju Middle School English Debating Championship. My name is Ju Kyung Park, chair of this championship executive committee and professor at Honam University. Before we begin today's debate, I'd like to congratulate both teams for coming this far. Please give a round of applause to our grand finalists. Today we have the motion, this House would prefer a short and successful life over a mundane, healthy life. And without any further ado, I'd like to welcome the Prime Minister to the podium.
Ladies and gentlemen, we on the government team prefer a life that is meaningful and worthy of living. Therefore, we prefer a life of success, even if it means we have to trade off some health or longevity, although society usually tells us this should be top priorities in life. These are the costs that we are willing to pay if it means we can escape the mundane life of a livestock that mindlessly goes about his daily life without achieving anything. Let's make some explicit definitions. We mean success by an individual fulfilling his purpose in life. This is going to be different person by person. For like Elon Musk, this will be transforming the way people live through innovation and science. For Warren Buffett, it will be studying about the nature of human interaction and then earning a huge amount of money from it. For Martin Luther King, it was restoring equality in an oppressive society. Secondly, short or healthy are relative concepts and not so important, as we want to debate about whether generally these aspects can be sacrificed, but at the same time, we should not go to extremes. Obviously, we think with our average life expectancy almost going up to the 100 years for millennials, short, successful life of dying when you are in your 30s is a fair characterization. Lastly, we define mundane life as a repeated, boring life, but the additional caveat is that it also has to be an unsuccessful life in order of the debate to work. Now I will go on to our team's first argument. Our team's first argument is about why purpose of life is the prerequisite of a worthy life. In the modern society, we are moving constantly away from religious realm and into the zones of security. The scary aspect of this departure from God is that it's much more difficult to find out why we need to live in the first place. It's all too easy to fall into nihilism or the belief that there is no meaning in life or anything. This is because scientifically and objectively speaking, we are really insignificant. I could die right now, and of course some people might be sad for a while, but people will move on because everyone dies sometime, and there are 70 billion people like you and me. Therefore, sadly, life isn't meaningful by default. If you go through some routine over and over again with no thought on the prospect of the future, no thought on what kind of goals you're moving towards, then your life is unmemorable and narrow. Let's take a very simplified example here. We don't usually remember what we had for lunch when only a few days has passed. If we eat the school cafeteria. Why? Because the food is not given by choice, and the reason why we have lunch is because we have to go through the routine that wasn't part of my deliberation. The school tells me I have to eat it, so I do. Then there is really no difference at all if I didn't have that lunch. It was a meaningful last meal that nobody remembers and cares about it. But when you have lunch plans with somebody to discuss some urgent matter with them or to celebrate their birthday or whatever, we do remember even after months and quite possibly years. Why? Because I planned and purposefully had the lunch, and that lunch made a difference in my life in terms of relationship with the person. In this sense, it is now necessary and crucial that we find the value of life from actively searching for meaning.
Madam.
Here we want to point out two things. Firstly, whatever it is to to live a successful life would mean that this person necessarily has some kind of purpose or a goal that he deliberately moved towards. Secondly, since it's a success, his success probably left a mark in this world that is unique. And why is this? A mundane life goes about the same routine over and over again, not out of free will and purposeful deliberation, but because you were passively pushed into this job that you don't care about, into the family you have to take care of because that's what's expected of a good father and or a good mother, then your life is really meaningless. The purpose finding is something that really differentiates humans from the rest of the animals. Sure, we can just live by earning money and eating and sleeping the way you're expected to. But then, what's the difference between your life and the life of animal in the farm? In order to transcend bar survival and actually live as human, we want to imbue meaning into our life. And our second argument is about, on a principle level, health and longevity should not be prioritized over the success. Ladies and gentlemen, we should argue on the side of government that health is more important value in the society. It is not our burden in this debate to prove why health is entirely unimportant. But what we are willing to argue is that health should not be prioritized over the concept of the success. Why? Because health is merely a means to achieve the end. In all its forms, individuals has a purpose of that life. Having a strong physical capacity, being able to live long enough, simply function as a means to an end for our individuals to achieve their independent goals. Sure, when we are unhealthy, then it's painful and it feels pretty bad. But the converse doesn't hold. A healthy person doesn't constantly and always appreciate the fact that he is healthy and regards this as an amazing condition because we look at healthy state to be a default state rather than something that is amazing and unique. Moreover, since these people lead mundane life and health was just given to them, chances are they won't fully appreciate their health anyways. And thank you for listening to my speech. I'm proud to propose.
Now I'd like to welcome the leader of opposition to the podium.
Mr. and Madam Speaker, on side opposition, we're sick and tired of being brainwashed with this weird, unrealistic social trend that are obsessed with success being fed through the media. The image of being rich, having a high social status, making a change in the world, these are being made by commercial interests in movies, dramas, advertisements, and then are forced thrown down our throats. We reject this notion. We think that rather appreciation of small, everyday events and sharing this feeling with your families and friends are what happiness is all about. And to this end, a healthy and mundane life is the better alternative. But before moving on to our team's two arguments, let me move on to rebut what the government team have said. They have stated about the purpose of life is a prerequisite of a worthy life, and they said that successful life is a way to finding a real meaning of life. We think that people are not deciding the meaning of life by themselves, and we think that people look to other individuals and try to see what kind of social values exist, and then they reflect to their life's goal and the purpose. So this means that the people with short and successful lives are unlikely to find something that is for their lives. We think that it doesn't fulfill the meaning of the life. So to move on to our team's two arguments, our team's first argument is about the success in itself doesn't bring about happiness. We're going to chronologically explain and analyze properly where happiness actually comes from. Firstly, before the actual event of success, you will have to go through much pain and sacrifice in order to achieve your goal, whatever it may be. Why is that? It's because when people define an achievement as success, it has to be difficult to achieve. For example, graduating high school here in Korea wouldn't be called success because it's not difficult and education is pretty accessible. But in many developing countries, high school diploma will be very much a success. We perceive success by looking at how much pain went into it. So it's going to be very difficult and painful to reach success, especially to the extent where you're actively giving up health and longevity as a condition given the motion. Then the important question is, where do people actually get happiness? We think that actual happiness that comes from success comes about after the event of success, when you can appreciate the results of your work. It could be very materialistic form, like spending a lot of money that you've earned, or feeling good as people recognize you in public. But what we want to focus on rather is the action of cherishing the past memories and experiences and sharing them with others. Let's take an example of marriage ceremony. For example, the actual event of marriage would take a lot of effort and stress in planning out the logistics, budget, who will invite, what we wear. And the day of marriage may be really hectic because we really don't want to mess it up. But why do people really obsess over the marriage ceremony anyways? It's because you have that special experience that you can share, talk about, and cherish with your soulmate for the rest of your life. That's why we try to be successful. That's why government teams' burden on defending a short, successful life is especially difficult, and you die. Therefore, we think that you die when you can finally enjoy what you have achieved. Our team's second argument is about the characterization of a mundane and healthy life and prove why it will bring about much happiness. We think that the core characteristic of a mundane life is that it is very much stereotypical and average. We do what we expect people to normally do. Get a job, get married, go on family vacations, maybe a picnic on Sundays, etc. That's why it's mundane, because it's all expected. We want to ask why these narratives should be considered as bad, because we think it's actually very positive. Let's compare this life with a life under government team. We want to say here that human beings cannot and do not perceive happiness in a mechanically weighed fashion. In other words, $100 million doesn't make you 100,000 times happier than $1,000. It's because we only perceive complex events happening to us by translating it to simple emotions that we can feel. Like, for example, we would translate winning the presidential election as emotions that comes from getting recognition from society, winning a competition, or feeling high hopes in the potentials that you can believe. In this sense, there is no significant difference in the amount of happiness between the success of government team and steady streams of happy moments under opposition team. But there is a significant difference between government and opposition in following ways. Firstly, the amount of happy moments you can have is severely limited under government. This is because, as I've told you, your life leading up to success will necessarily make you give up things like friends, things like vacations, things like even marriage, if you look at very successful role models. So if you have limited number of these happy instances. Secondly, you have limited capacity in appreciating and cherishing what you have achieved. This is because you have sacrificed health and longevity that allows you to do this after you achieve success, as mentioned in the previous argument. You need to be healthy and alive to look back on these events, which are in themselves very fleeting, to properly cherish them. So what did I prove in today's debate? We gave two arguments. Firstly, how the success itself doesn't bring about happiness, and secondly, we have proved to you how the characterization of mundane and healthy life, and we have proved to you why it will bring about much happiness. So therefore, I'm proud to oppose. Thank you.
Now I'd like to welcome the Deputy Prime Minister to the podium.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the second speaker in the opposition side. Today, I bring you rebuttals from my previous speaker, and lastly, I will claim our team's last argument, which is why we should actively reject social norms of how we should live. Before I move on to our team's last argument, I'll first rebut to my previous speaker's response to our team's first two cases. Our team's first two cases was basically about a successful life to find a real meaning of life. However, she rebutted that a successful life can be found from the near people, and the near people should be more prioritized than the successful life in finding out the real meaning of life. However, as I will say much in my rebuttals, we believe that the real meaning of life found from the successful life is more beneficial for the president itself and should be much more prioritized. And now I'll move on to the rebuttals from my previous speaker's first two arguments. My previous speaker's first argument was about the success in itself, but doesn't bring any happiness when living in a successful life, not a mundane, healthy life. As our first speaker said, we believe that the meaning coming from the successful life is the real meaning. We believe that understanding what the person desires and having an interest most is the most important factor of living as a successful life. And we believe that we should prioritize the successful life rather than the mundane life, which we believe that it will bring less benefit than the opposition's policy. the previous speaker's second argument was about the characterization of muting happy life by saying that it will bring much happiness by near people by getting married or being friends with other or having connection with other near people around us. However, the government team believed that the person should recognize themselves and recognize the real meaning of their life before they get to contact with other friends or other people near them and get to be friends with others and be married to others. So we believe that the opposition case is very invalid, and we believe that our team's first two cases was very beneficial to the current life for many people. And now I'll move on to our team's last argument, which is on how we should actively reject social norms of how we should live. Madam Speaker, despite the fact that everyone is unique, the society constantly expects us to perform certain tasks just to fit in and be muting. For example, muting norms like entering college, get a sustainable job, get married before mid-30s are not truly representative of how each individual wants their life to be filled out. It's actually just something that people do passively because everybody else is doing it. Following this passively make your life stereotypical and boring. And therefore, we believe that most of the muting lives come out in this form. This is bad for two reasons. First, mutingness often comes in form that is not suitable to individuals following the muting norms. Getting a car, getting a high percentage in education, a house, a job. These things take massive amount of effort. The amount of effort that could have gone towards searching out on what actually makes me motivated and investing efforts into it. It's already famous that many of the famous well-achieved persons, like Bill Gates, are college dropouts. Same things with many sports stars that don't go to high schools. You have to reject the muting requests from society because they're not a matching solution to your individual capacity and ideals. But if you keep conforming to the muting requests, you will never be able to explore who you are and what you can do. Secondly, living a muting life also includes not challenging the current social constructs and views, and not going out of one's ways to actually question its legitimacy. Because during Japanese colonialist period, shouting up about freedom and independence would be the muting hell's way to sustain your life. But there are people like Yu Gun-sun who challenged this idea. They had a strong goal in life. Was her life full of pain? Yes, sure. But what truly makes human humane is a choice that we can deliberately make to have a purpose in life that is worthy of pain, worthy of sacrificing the comforts of living in a livestock, and these human aspects ultimately move our society forward. So, to wrap up, I have presented to you our team's main last argument, which is about why we should actively reject social norms of how we should live, and also, I have presented you the rebuttals for my previous speakers' first two argument cases, and also I had responded to my previous speakers rebutting to our team's first two cases. Thank you for listening. I'm proud to propose.
Now I'd like to welcome the Deputy Leader of Opposition to the podium.
Mr. and Madam Speaker, what actually is the difference between human life and animals in farms as the government told us? We think the main difference is that people have the full capacity to actively go after happiness. And we are going to prove to you why opposition's world provides a better environment for people to actually go after happiness and make their life meaningful. With that being said, as the second speaker of side opposition, I'm going to do three things for you. So first of all, I'm going to talk about their case about like worthy life and their meanings. And secondly, I'm going to talk about our case and how there was a lack of engagement. And third of all, I'm going to present to you our third argument, which is about finding your self-worth and identity in the world. Let's move on to their case about the prerequisite of worthy life. So they told us that, so we have 4 rebuttals regarding this, their first argument. So they talked about how nihilism is going to be insignificant and whatnot. But we are going to prove to you why, in the government side, nihilism is going to be much more easy to fall in. This is going to be more elaborated in the third argument, and we are going to explain why you need to find your self-identity in order to not fall in nihilism. Second response, they told us how like worthiness comes from, they told us the worthiness of the lives and whatnot and how you need success. But we on the other hand tell you that worthiness comes when you're appreciated and cherished, like our elder clearly told us from the very beginning of the debate. And the third response is about how this is how it is very unrealistic to know the purpose of life like automatically. So we think it is a very unrealistic situation where people just already know the purpose of life with a sense of duty so strong that they're willing to sacrifice their life for it. The debate happens now in a vacuum because this is rarely the case. Moreover, we think that people don't decide the meaning of life and vacuum by themselves. People look to other humans and try to see what kind of social values exist, and then reflect off to decide their purposes in life. In this sense, people with short, successful lives are unlikely to find something that is truly satisfactory and fulfilling to their meaning of life because they have less chance to explore and they have less encouraged to society. Well, this will be more elaborated in our third argument, which I'm going to present to you later. But before I move on to my third argument, I would like to mention the fact that like government gave us a lack of engagement, they haven't engaged to our second argument. So let's move on to our third argument. Our third argument is why mundane, healthy life allows individuals to better find their self-worth and identity in this world. We think that individuals can only define themselves within the context of given society. The assumption that people find self-identity and goals and values is invalid and unrealistic itself. Therefore, when people try to answer questions like who they are and what they should do, they look into the social norms and societal narratives of what a certain member of that society should actually do. In this sense, having a social strong tie to a society that you identify yourself with is very important in order to answer such questions and to not fall into nihilistic self-doubt, which the government has also mentioned. That's why this mundane life is so good. You can much more easily identify yourself with the society you belong to because you're living the life that is stereotypical to the society. You're doing what a person living in the society ought to be doing, ladies and gentlemen. Not to mention social narratives that come from books, media, or even news and politics all focus on the mainstream target audiences, which are people leading to a mundane, average life. So society constantly provides discourses on what mundane, average people's concerns are and what we should be doing about it. And mundane people can really emphasize with such stories. The proposition team, however, is in a sense a social minority. You are very far from the stereotypes of Korean youth, for example, and you will have no social narratives that you can emphasize and join in with. This is especially so if you achieved your success at a very young age, which is very rare in most cases. Your life leading up to the success is also quite different from your peers. All through your life, you're a stranger in your own community, and your concerns, needs, and wants are not heard at all. You're detached and spiraling out from the society, and you're likely to fall into nihilism or the belief that everything is empty and meaningless, which is what happens for young, successful people. Mr. and Madam Speaker, this argument itself is a rebuttal to their whole case. So we prove by nihilism is falling into nihilism has a high possibility in their case rather than our case. And we also prove to you why, the purpose of why success is not always a good thing, because you can always lack the finding of self-worth and identity, which is very important, like I have emphasized in this debate. And they talked about the social norms and rejecting them, but we also told you in our third argument that social norm is not always a bad thing. Rather, it is a good thing, a very important thing, a very significant thing in order to find your self-worth and identity throughout this world. With that being said, the opposition is proud to oppose that mundane life is very better than a short and a successful life. We are more than proud to oppose.
Now I'd like to welcome the government whip to the podium.
Mr. Madam Speaker, our government team successfully proved why the life we prefer is more worthy than the life they prefer, which is a mundane and healthy life. And
I bring up 2 clashes to this debate, which will explain why we won this debate. So I'll just go on to my first clash, which is whether the short and successful life brings worthy life. Mr. Madam Speaker, we the Government House strongly believes that successful life, even though it is short, it will be more meaningful for the meaningful life for the people. However, the opposition is in the positions that healthy and ordinary life is better than the life that we mentioned, and it's more happy. But we successfully explained how healthy, but people that has no vision and no happiness. However, the opposition house is arguing success doesn't bring happiness, and we agree about the opposition's logic that we, which is the people, can be happy without success. However, we the Government House believe success is very much related to happiness. And Mr. Madam Speaker, why on earth will people be unhappy with doing things that the individuals wants to do and doing that they want to achieve? So we the Government House believes success will be pretty much happy for the people, and happiness, which was the opposition main point, can be, and which opposition's main point can be achieved by our like point of view, which is the successful lives. Also, I'll go on to my second clash, which is why Minden life can't achieve happiness better than the successful life. Mr. Madam Speaker, we the Government House believes that happiness, which was opposition's main point, can be fully achieved. We believe happiness and valuable feelings could be also achieved in our life, in the life that the government prefers, the successful life. So we think that the feelings that we get when we success of and achieve something that we want will be very it will be a very big feelings, and it will be very special feelings than the opposition is telling about, like this ordinary like happiness that we can find in the life. So we think that success, even if it is a short life, we think that this could be very worthy to. This could be more worthy, and it could be more happy for the people to feel, and we think that it could be very like the people that feels this happiness in when they success will be very very special, and it would be very special for the people. But the opposition house was arguing about that Minden and healthy life will be more happiness in the original lives, and that feelings that are feelings that are sharing with their families, friends, and they feeling loves. They talked about this kind of points, but we think that special successful lives, we think that we could achieve more than this that the opposition is mentioning, that achieving what we want and achieving what we want, and getting introduced it to many people, that and being proud of their successful lives. We think that it could be more beneficial to the peoples that are having a successful life. And we agree that unhealthiness and painful feeling will be very very hard for that peoples, but we think that this the spotlights that the success people get will be more bigger, and will overcome this harms that when we are unhealthy. We think that it would overcome the harms, and we think that this the expressions that they get when they success in that moment, it would be very happiness, and which will overcome just daily happiness, which would be very when we consider it would be a monthly, it's the amount of that happiness would never overcome the happiness when we success. So we think that this could successful life is more valuable than the ordinary life, and we also think that happiness could be achieved and achieved more in successful lives as we are talking about. So I'm proud to propose. Thank you for listening.
Now I'd like to welcome the opposition whip to the podium.
Mr. Madam Speaker, we think the core principle behind this debate and the thing that should actually decide the win or loss of this debate is about which side actually gives the better purpose of life and the better purpose of happiness itself. That is to say, which side actually provides more analysis and more rebuttals on which ones and the other, which actually is actually a way to give more life a meaning itself, and that is to say, more happiness itself, Mr. Speaker. Before we move on to the very last clash that we give you, is that the definition of life, or definition of happiness itself, which life itself gives more happiness, some clarification I'm willing to make to their third argument, right? First of all, in their third argument, they told us why we should actively reject social norms of how we should live. And they gave two analyses, right? First of all, they gave us the mundaneness often comes in a form that is not suitable to the individuals following the mundane norms. We neglect that premise from the beginning. Why is it? Because even if when it comes to mundaneness, we think that those are things that are very, very subjective. That is to say, one individual can think eating steak as a mundane thing, and the other person do not, Mr. Speaker. That is to say, we think mundaneness is also subjective. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we also tell you that mundaneness, first of all, can always come in a suitable way. That is to say, because it's different from individuals, subjective to subjective, from people to people, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, that first analysis does not make sense. But second of all, they told us that living a mundane life also includes not challenging the current social constructs, Mr. Speaker. First of all, we think there's no reason why challenge is always a good thing, Mr. Speaker. For example, even in cases where we look at the history, sometimes challenge actually did harm the society itself and harm their individuals itself, Mr. Speaker. That itself is something we see is very, very clear. To say that challenge is not always successful, nonetheless not always something that's happy, Mr. Speaker. And even if it could be something successful, we tell you the amount of sacrifice that goes into that challenge itself is overweighs the amount of happiness that at the end of the day they could get. Why is it? Because we're going to compare their analysis, but it's just pre-rebuttals, right? First of all, we think the instant itself, the amount of time itself is different. But second of all, we think the amount of to reflect back to the certain idea or reflect back to what I've done is actually short, Mr. Speaker, which I'm willing to give into our very last clash, Mr. Speaker. So what's our very last clash of this debate, Mr. Speaker? We think there was currently one clash that actually decides this debate, Mr. Speaker. What's the definition of happiness itself? On side government, they gave us one success is the all happiness that it could create. We gave you a long-term success, a long-term happiness is what is actually good, long-term mundane, Mr. Speaker. Let's look at government's case scenario. They told us in their first and second argument that one success is very good. I'm going to compare one success and the long-term thing, mundane things, in two levels on which one actually gives more happiness. First of all, I'm going to give you the term itself, of how it's long and how it's short. But second of all, I'm going to give you whether it's instant or something that lasts long, Mr. Speaker, whether that idea itself or that the thought itself actually lasts long or it's an instant thing, Mr. Speaker. Let's talk about government case scenarios where they talk about one success. Two levels. First of all, Mr. Speaker, one success itself is a very short thing, Mr. Speaker. Why is it very short? We tell you it can be short in two ways. First of all, the amount of happiness they do actually feel itself is short, Mr. Speaker. Because that one success is just simply one, Mr. Speaker. That's the reason why it's short, and that's the reason why it is not actually, does not last long in a long-term view. But second of all, Mr. Speaker, we think it's a short time to turn back to what they've done in their past history and something that they achieved, Mr. Speaker. We tell you high sacrifice is gone into Mr. Speaker, but the very fact that they cannot look back, it means that it's less happiness because the amount of sacrifice itself clearly we think overweighs the amount of just the one success, Mr. Speaker. So why do we think that actually long-term thing is actually much more important than short-term thing, as you say, Mr. Speaker? We tell you when it comes to talking about long-term and short-term thing, it's a comparative thing, right? That is to say, something called long-term happiness is something that goes for a long and adds a lot and a lot, Mr. Speaker. We tell you the idea of life itself, it's not about living for 1 second or 10 seconds or whatnot. We think we live life for maybe, even if it's a short life, Mr. Speaker, even if we say in their case scenario, short and successful life. We don't think that's necessarily a very, very short life, that I say. We think at least we go through the many processes of going toward that success itself. We think that we go through the process and actually after that itself, Mr. as well, Mr. Speaker. When it comes to comparing those situations where it's not only 1 minute or 1 second or whatnot, whether it's maybe at least 30 years, we say, when it comes to all those situations, something called long-term life is actually, long-term happiness could be a much important thing than a short-term thing, Mr. Speaker. So that's the reason why we think their argument about giving like one success within their first argument can never make sense, right? But second of all, they told us that healthy is a mean and success is an end, therefore mean should be prioritized. Two rebuttals I'm going to give you. First of all, Mr. and Speaker, we don't think end something or the result is always the main thing that exists in their social norm, not only the social norm, but the social consensus, Mr. Speaker. That's the reason why international community, even they too can kill Kim Jong-un, do not actually kill Kim Jong-un, Mr. Speaker, because we sometimes prioritize being itself than the end itself, Mr. Speaker. Just like in this scenario, and just like the example we gave you, Mr. Speaker. But second of all, we don't think actually it means less health. We don't think that actually means health should be less prioritized. We told you something called life exists for a long-term thing. That is to say, being sometimes is actually much more long-term than the amount of success or the amount of 1 second, Mr. Speaker. When it comes to talking about that idea of sacrifice and that idea of pain that individual gets, Mr. Speaker, we tell you when it comes to talking about means, it should be prioritized in those situations where it's not short-term thing, but it's a long-term thing, Mr. Speaker. So that's the reason why their first and second and third arguments will never make sense from the beginning. But let's move on to our case scenario. Why we told you that we could prove to you why long-term life is a much more better thing, and the long-term and mundane life is actually what gives much more happiness. I gave you in this class two ways to compare this. One about the term itself, how it lasts long, and two, whether it was instant or a long-term thing with Mr. Speaker. We tell you long-term thing achieves both of those principles and both of those purposes in 3 ways. First of all, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to mundane life, it's like mundane plus mundane plus mundane plus mundane plus, I don't know, like infinite, Mr. Speaker. We think that itself is something correct to say. It's a long-term thing and it lasts long, not only within the mean or the process itself, but also at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker. But second of all, we think there's more time to look back to what I've done within the situation. That is to say, with my memory, Mr. Speaker, I can look back to what happened because I am experiencing the same state over and over again. We think that's what actually makes happiness to certain individuals and to makes happiness to people, Mr. Speaker. But third of all, we think that's a good time to actually look back at our identities and to actually notice our identity and who we are, Mr. Speaker. We think that's what the real life of meaning is, Mr. Speaker. To look back to me and who I really am, Mr. Speaker. And that's the reason why we're very proud to oppose this debate.
Now I'd like to welcome the opposition reply to the podium.
Mr. and Madam Speaker, Heath Ledger went through a great deal of pain to achieve his success in the role in the Joker in the Dark Knight. He was actively trading off his health and life, overdosing on drugs, and mentally breaking down to fit in the role. Then as he finished this masterpiece, he died from overdose. We don't want this life. We just spend so much time toiling away for success, then you die in vain, unable to actually cherish what you have achieved. So we're going to directly move on to the 2 points mainly in today's debate. There were two, so the first point is about when does happiness come, and second point is what is the real meaning of life. Firstly, when does the happiness come? So in the government team's case, they state that health and longevity should not be prioritized over success. And we think that in their words, because health is a tool to achieve individual scores, we think that they're not going to never achieve the happiness of life. But in our team's case, in the opposition team's case, we don't think that happiness is not achieved when a person is successful. So in their second argument, they also have agreed onto it by saying when we are unhealthy, then it's painful and feels pretty bad. So we say health should be the best prioritization of individuals because there are 2 reasons why. Firstly, we think that's the health and the body, it's your asset when you're born in the first place. And secondly, we think that the success has no meaning because when you are so painful, you don't have any thinking that you should be to be healthy. And second point is about what is the real meaning of life. So the government team have stated about achieving the successful life is the finding the real meaning of life, which is living successfully. And in the opposition team's case, we have stated that even if you give up health and longevity for the success, we think that it doesn't bring the happiness for individuals. So our team's first argument says happiness comes after the success when the results are satisfied to individuals. But when the results are not satisfied for the individuals, we think that it gives 2 harms to the individuals. Firstly, the mental illness, and secondly, about the physical illness. Firstly, about the mental illness, we think that's when I don't achieve that certain goal and the purpose, it will give them mental harms to the individuals because they actually didn't achieve their purpose of their life. Secondly, we think that it's going to give the physical illness because they harm their body by achieving their goal and in the process of their goal. Secondly, we think that The second thing we have pointed to that the people cannot decide the meaning of life by themselves because people look other individuals and see the values in the society by just reflecting the other people's life goals. So therefore, we think that we have stated that we can't find something that is actually for their life and actually fits for their life. If therefore we think that there's no the individuals cannot fulfill the meaning of their life. So we think that in the world of the government team, we say that the individuals can never achieve happiness. Happiness in the mental way and in the physical way. By these 2 points, I'm proud to oppose. Thank you.
Finally, I'd like to welcome the government reply to the podium.
Mr. Madam Speaker, as the last speaker of the government side, I want to prove why government succeeds on proving our burden, whether opposition sides failed on proving their burden on today's debate. Firstly, I will talk about the government burden of proof first. Our team believes that a government team burden was to prove why short and successful life provides more essential and happier life than mundane healthy life. Our team believes that the government prove why having a successful life, you have successful life and living a life that having an interest is more beneficial rather than mundane life. Our team believes that the government side mentioned that repeating same routine again and again with no thought and no feelings is not a meaningful life to live. Moreover, our government side proved why a successful life should be more prioritized than one's health and longevity or other the mundane health life. That side government claimed that health is morally meaning achieved the end, so our team believes that the healthy life cannot be prioritized over the successful life. So our team believes that the government has proved this burden in various ways. And now on, I will go on to the opposition team's burden. Our team believes that the opposition's burden was to prove why mundane healthy life is more beneficial and it provides more a safer life. Opposition side mentioned that success itself doesn't bring any happiness toward to the people. And also the team opposition claimed that actual happiness comes after the event of the success or when we can appreciate the result of the work. However, the honorable judicator, our government side defined that success can be defined by an individual fulfilling own purpose in life. Our team believes that appreciating the result of the work can be own purpose in the life too. To wrap up, the opposition side failed to give enough rebuttals, engagement, and explanation, so we believe that the team proposition take this debate home. Thank you for listening, and I'm proud to propose.
This is the end of the grand finals. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me congratulating both teams on their successful debate with a round of applause. Speakers may now cross the floor and shake hands. Thank you for your great, outstanding efforts. And I'm really proud of you, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you all become our future leader of Korea and the world. I wish you all the best. And thank you very much.